Hello, everyone. My name is Mike Moran, and I am the author of a superhero novel trilogy series. We are currently in Book 2, Chapter 17, Leah's Birthday. Last night was amazing, Cherry exclaimed. I can't believe we got on stage, Vaughn screamed. I really needed that. It's been rough for the past few weeks, dealing with Leah and all the cancer stuff, but last night was a relief. I finally feel like I did something right. Good to hear, bro. I knew you were in a dark place and working too hard. Don't forget about me and your friends. You always gotta make time to hang out and have fun. I hear you, Vaughn. Thanks for a fun night. Maybe next time we can hang out with Blake too. I'd like to introduce you to Ryan sometime. I bet you guys would hit it off. Sounds good, Jerry. Catch you later. Peace out, Vaughn. Oh. Jerry happily walked out of Vaughn's home and started daydreaming about everything that happened last night. The rock concert still felt surreal, making Jerry wonder how everything went so well. He saved people's lives as a hero, stood on stage like a celebrity, and inspired everyone to fight cancer on live TV. Nothing could make Jerry any happier, until he received a text message from Cynthia. She said, "Come to your parents' house ASAP. We've got a surprise for you." Jerry smiled with delight, finding it hard to believe that his day could get any better. He typed his reply to the message, clicked the button to send it, and teleported away. Jerry instantly arrived inside his parents' home and appeared right in front of Cynthia just as her phone beeped with a new text message from Jerry. Cynthia wasn't surprised at all. Instead, she grinned at Jerry and asked, "Are you showing off? I bet my trick is better than yours." Cynthia stepped aside, and Jerry could not believe what he saw. Leah was sitting on the couch watching TV with Mr. and Mrs. Miller. They all waved to Jerry and shouted, "Hello! Welcome back!" Jerry was both ecstatic and confused when he saw Leah and his family all happy together. He looked at Cynthia for an explanation, but she simply grabbed his hand and led him over to the couch. Mrs. Miller stood up and explained, "We saw your talk show event on TV and realized how much you and Cynthia care about Leah. So your dad and I talked and came up with a plan. We called Leah's foster care foundation, arranged a meeting, and signed an agreement. Due to Leah's special health condition and everything you've done to help her, they agreed that she can stay with us for as long as she likes. All she has to do is call her foster care sponsor every day to check in and make sure she's happy and safe. She'll be sleeping in your room, since you often sleep elsewhere anyway. What do you think?" Jerry was speechless. He truly had no idea what to say. A tear rolled down his cheek, and he hugged his mom and said, "Thank you." Mr. Miller chimed in. "She's a great addition to the family. Much cuter than you were at her age. You were a terror. Don't you remember that middle school incident?" Jerry scratched his head and replied, "Sorry about that. I was still learning about my powers back then." Yeah, we know," Mr. Miller nodded. "Don't feel too bad about it, though. It was partially our fault for being in denial for so long. Thinking back to your childhood, it was pretty obvious that you were special, just like Leah." "Tell me everything. I want to know exactly what Jerry was like as a kid," Leah excitedly begged. "I'd like to know more about Jerry's childhood, too, especially the embarrassing stuff," Cynthia requested. Mr. and Mrs. Miller joyfully shared many stories about Jerry's past. They laughed and poked fun at his expense for a while. In the meantime, Jerry was starving since he hadn't eaten breakfast and it was already lunchtime. He went to the kitchen and boiled a few hot dogs. After eating lunch, Leah smiled at Jerry and asked, "Do you know what today is? It's my birthday." "Oh man, that's awesome." "Yep, it's my 13th birthday. Remember when we first met? I told you that I didn't think I would make it because of my cancer? But you changed that." Jerry looked down and said, "I didn't do anything. You made it on your own." "That's not true at all. You totally helped. Remember what you did on this talk show? Even though you didn't cure me, I think you slowed it down and gave me more time to live. And who knows? Maybe you can do that again and I'll live even longer." Jerry suddenly smiled widely, realizing that she might be right. Maybe if he continuously tried to cure her once a month, like cancer patients going through chemotherapy, then she might live happily for a very long time. He gave her a big hug and hollered, "We have to celebrate. Tell me something you'd like to do for your birthday. Leah looked around, wondering what they could all do together. Then she saw a beautiful boat in the backyard and answered, Is that a boat? I've never gone boating before. Can we go boating? Jerry's mouth gaped open, finding it impossible to believe that she'd never been boating before. Mr. Miller stood up and explained, The weather's perfect for boating. Jerry and I will get the boat ready while you all go and get ready. Cynthia announced, I've got plenty of old swimsuits back at home. You're coming with me, Leah. Mrs. Miller declared, I'll put together snacks and drinks for boating. Then it's settled. Today will be a great family day, Mr. Miller asserted. Everyone went their separate ways, following the plan exactly as outlined. Mr. Miller tested the boat batteries, engine, and electronics. Jerry loaded up the boat with cushions, life jackets, floats, ropes, towels, sunblock lotion, and other necessities. Mrs. Miller prepared a cooler with drinks, ham sandwiches, saltine crackers, and vanilla cream cookies. Unfortunately, Cynthia's quest was a little more complicated. When she arrived home, she had to search the house for her old swimsuits to dress up Leah. Leah, however, was not helping and being nosy, touching everything in the house. Cynthia could not remember where her old swimsuits were. But luckily, Cynthia's mom came home for a late lunch. She was always busy working and in a rush, but Leah introduced herself, and Cynthia's mom was delighted. Cynthia explained the situation, and her mom offered to help. While Cynthia was getting dressed and preparing for boating, her mother took Leah to the attic, where she keeps old boxes of clothing. After trying on a few different outfits, Leah found the perfect swimsuit, a white one-piece swimsuit with tropical palm fronds and small pink flowers. Leah jumped up and down with joy, loving her outfit and feeling happy to be spoiled by a nice mother. Since it was a family outing, Cynthia also decided to wear a one-piece navy blue swimsuit. Cynthia's mother wished them good luck and went back to work while Cynthia and Leah drove back to Jerry's parents' house. Cynthia, Leah, Jerry, and his parents all gathered together and squeezed into the family SUV with the boat trailer attached. They drove to the marina, put the boat into the water, and finally started their family outing. Mr. Miller informed everyone that it would take about 45 minutes to reach their destination, an island called Elliott Key. Mr. Miller drove the boat, Mrs. Miller talked and entertained him in the passenger seat beside him, and Cynthia, Leah, and Jerry relaxed in the front of the boat. During the long drive, Jerry explained everything he did in order to find a cure to cancer. I entered the body of a nanobot to try and fight cancer cells. You did what? How? Cynthia asked anxiously. I moved my mind into a nanobot using my powers. That's so cool. I want to try it, Leah blurted out. Are you crazy? Cynthia protested. What if you get stuck inside the nanobot forever? I guess you'd be marrying a nanobot then, Jerry joked. Leah laughed, imagining Jerry as a tiny nanobot wearing a tuxedo at his own wedding. Cynthia shook her head and stated, You two are crazy. Are you sure you're not related? Jerry laughed and then paused for a moment, trying to decide if Leah would be his daughter, sister, cousin, or other family relative. Cynthia could see Jerry's brain working too hard to figure it out, and she started laughing at him. Leah, however, began seriously considering the idea of moving her mind into a nanobot. Since her powers allow her to move through objects and people, maybe it's possible for her to do it. They all finally arrived at Elliott Key. The island was full of trees and sand, just like any other island. However, there were no people on the island, and everything around it was spectacular. The water was clear, and you could see coral reefs ready to explore. Mr. Miller pulled out a large green bag full of snorkeling equipment. Jerry, Leah, and Mr. Miller put on their equipment and went snorkeling together. Cynthia and Mrs. Miller chose to hop into the water with drinks and floats, small square cushions that allow you to sit and float in the water. Leah had never gone snorkeling before and was fascinated by everything she saw underwater. There were clownfish, small orange fish with white stripes, whisking in and out of plants. There were damselfish, small blue fish with a gold tail, zipping around the corals. There were also a few lobsters, with long antennae hiding in the corals. Lastly, there was an eel popping out of a coral. It looked like a large underwater snake, and Leah had never seen it before, so she freaked out and swam swiftly out of the water and onto the boat. Jerry and Mr. Miller laughed, but Leah vowed to never enter the water again. Usually, Jerry would play nice and honor Leah's request, but he couldn't resist an opportunity to show off his powers. He calmly floated in the water and concentrated for a moment. Mr. Miller had an idea what was coming and braced himself for a show. Soon enough, small fish began jumping out of the water and flying over the boat. Leah scrambled around the boat, ducking and dodging flying fish. But eventually, she grabbed a life jacket and pulled and jumped back into the water. Everybody was laughing except Leah, who was now hiding behind Cynthia and Mrs. Miller in the water. The girls told Leah a story about Jerry's previous fishing experience a year ago, and then Leah finally smiled and asked a dozen questions. She could not believe that Jerry used his powers to control fish and a whale. She realized how different Jerry truly is, being able to do almost anything with his powers, while other people with powers were significantly limited in their capabilities. Jerry reassured her that it's all about imagination and the power of belief, trying to convince her that she can do more with her powers than she thinks. Leah smiled and began imagining all the possibilities of her powers. Meanwhile, Jerry climbed onto the boat and took out crackers. He crumbled a few up in his hands and sprinkled it all into the water. Many fish swam up and began nibbling the food. Jerry recited a short prayer, thanking the fish for helping him mess with Leah. Leah heard that, and her eyes changed into a bright aqua color. Then she spread her arms wide and swung them together to splash Jerry. However, she accidentally activated a new power and formed a 7-foot wave that crashed over the boat. Jerry was shocked and soaking wet, staring at Leah with wide eyes. She immediately shouted with excitement, realizing that she had done something cool and new with her powers. Everyone else laughed, and Jerry retaliated by jumping back into the water in the form of a cannonball, sending water rolling over everyone. Jerry thought he would have the last laugh, but then everyone else teamed up and began splashing water back at Jerry. After 3 minutes of water mayhem, everyone stopped and laughed together as a family. They all spent the rest of the day eating, swimming, chatting, snorkeling, and playing games in the water. Everybody had a wonderful time together, far away from school, work, cancer, and other stresses or responsibilities. Most importantly, it was the best day of Leah's life. She no longer felt like an orphan waiting to die, alone. Instead, she felt like a family member, loved by everyone around her. Now she was ready for whatever the future may hold. The sun began to fall, and night time was less than an hour away. Mr. Miller announced that it was time to go home, wanting to arrive at the marina before dark, because boating at night is slightly dangerous. Everyone agreed and prepared to leave. Leah, wanted one last look at the sun and a picture to keep as a memory. Leah jumped onto Jerry's back, and he lifted her onto his shoulders. They turned their backs to the island and faced the sun for a picture with the best lighting. Leah held Jerry's phone in her hand, ready to take a selfie of them both together. Everyone smiled as she pressed the button. But something went wrong. Jerry heard a low, familiar sound, sensed a burst of energy, and then Leah coughed blood. Her body plunged forward and off Jerry's shoulders. He caught her in his arms, which were quickly covered in blood. Jerry's face turned white, and he could not believe what he saw, a large hole through Leah's back and chest. The wound was sizzling hot and far past the critical point. Jerry tried to quickly concentrate his powers and heal her, but it was hopelessly too late. Leah was gone. Her life force vanished, but her hand clutched Jerry's cell phone, and her eyes were wide open, ready for the perfect picture. Cynthia and the Millers stared in horror, not understanding how or why this happened. Jerry drowned himself in a pool of regret and rage. He saw his favorite memories of Leah burning away at the seams, saving her at the beach, watching her run around the wedding reception, watching her show off her powers, visiting her in foster care, buying her food, taking her flying for the first time, holding her hand on live TV, taking her boating, snorkeling, and carrying her on his shoulders for the perfect picture. All these memories hopelessly melted away, and the vivid image of her bloody dead corpse clouded his mind. Her kind smile, overly joyful energy, and colorful, ever-changing eyes all slipped into oblivion. Every positive feeling ever invoked by Leah disappeared in an instant. Now he only felt pain, loss, and the guilt of failing to save her life. Eventually, something in Jerry's mind clicked, a switch that was always out of reach: his sanity. Jerry flipped the switch and began to see everything in blood red. He felt a familiar energy on the nearby island, someone hiding in the trees. The familiar figure was charging up again, preparing to fire another fatal attack. But Jerry was ready this time. As a beam of red energy fired at their boat, Jerry's wrathful energy exploded. Smoke burst all around the front of the boat, concealing his energy and rage. When the smoke cleared, he looked very different, almost unrecognizable. Jerry had fully transformed into something horrific. He had black draconic wings, enlarged muscles, pulsating veins, demonic claws, and frightening energy crackling around his body that paralyzed Cynthia and the Millers. Jerry suddenly roared with the strength of a dragon. Laser point! Come out now! Cynthia gasped and choked on her emotions, not wanting to accept that a fellow believer betrayed them and killed Leah. Mrs. Miller burst into tears, and Mr. Miller clenched his fist, feeling powerless as he watched his son falling into chaos. Laserpoint did not reveal himself, and Jerry took matters into his own hands. He spread his arms wide, charged up dark energy in his claws, and clapped his hands together, creating a massive shockwave that destroyed all the trees on the island. The trees ruptured and splintered everywhere, soon revealing Laserpoint with a sphere of energy around his body for protection. Now, with his enemy out in the open, Jerry leaped off the boat and charged Laserpoint head on. Laserpoint absorbed the sphere of laser energy and fired a beam directly at Jerry, but he blocked it with his dark energy claws, causing the laser beam to ricochet onto the ground and set fallen debris aflame. As Jerry closed in on his prey, Laserpoint swiftly conjured energy in both of his hands and created laser beam swords. Now, Laserpoint wielded two powerful energy swords that could cut through almost anything. Jerry and Laserpoint engaged in lethal melee combat, attacking each other at full strength and going for the kill. Slice, thwack, boom. Every claw and sword attack collided and countered one another, causing flickers of energy to spread across the ground. Every attack sparked a new fire, turning the entire island into a burning inferno. Their fight had transformed the environment into a living hell, and none of them were giving up. But there was a significant difference between the two combatants. Laserpoint was knowingly outclassed and fighting to survive. He had analyzed Jerry's powers during training and thought he could win easily, but he was not prepared for Jerry's new transformation and increased power. Jerry, on the other hand, was vicious and relentless, a raging machine bent on avenging Leah's death. Every subsequent attack pushed Laserpoint backward and wore him down. It was only a matter of time before Jerry would land a killing blow. Cynthia shouted at Jerry, trying to make him stop before it was too late. She knew Jerry was not a murderer. She knew how killing Kevin deeply affected him a year ago, and she did not want him to do it again. But try as she may, she was unable to reach him by conventional means. Cynthia desperately closed her eyes and concentrated her power. Meanwhile, Jerry gained the advantage and grabbed Laserpoint's hands. His demonic claws squeezed and pierced Laserpoint's hands, causing blood to ooze out. Laserpoint's energy weakened and his beam swords disappeared. Jerry took a deep breath, sucking in nearby flames like a vacuum into his mouth and lungs. Then he roared like a dragon and blasted Laserpoint with a breath of fire. Laserpoint barely managed to summon his remaining energy into an energy shield. It blocked half of Jerry's fire blast, but the rest made it through and launched Laserpoint onto the coastline. His body and clothing were engulfed in flames, but luckily half his body fell into the water and extinguished the flames. Most of his body suffered severe burns, but he was still alive and conscious, lying on the sand. As Jerry stomped toward his defeated foe, Cynthia finally used her powers to reach into Jerry's heart. She calmed his rage and convinced him that killing Laserpoint would not bring Leah back to life. Jerry's muscles began to shrink. His veins stopped pulsating. His claws changed into fingernails, his wings contracted into his back, and his ferocious energy dissipated. Jerry's vengeful spirit faded, and Laserpoint was nearly helpless. However, there was a noticeable change in Laserpoint's eyes, as if he suddenly awakened from a terrible nightmare. Jerry began to angrily interrogate him. Why'd you attack us? Why'd you kill Leah? I don't know. What do you mean you don't know? You killed a 13-year-old girl in cold blood. You murdered her. I don't know. Couldn't be. How could I? Not possible. What's wrong with you, damn it? Jerry angrily exclaimed. I I can't do this. Can't live with myself. Jerry continued interrogating Laserpoint, but could not get any sensible information out of him. Laserpoint slowly moved his right hand over his heart, and Jerry thought nothing of it. He figured Laserpoint was showing emotion or feeling pain, but it was something else entirely unexpected. Laserpoint suddenly blasted all his remaining energy into his own heart. He killed himself right in front of Jerry. Cynthia and Jerry felt that pain. It seeped into their souls and stained them forever. It felt exactly the same as when Kevin died a year ago. If only there was something they could have done differently, something to save both Leah and Laserpoint. Cynthia burst into tears and fell onto her knees, overcome by sorrowful emotion. Mrs. Miller cried and clung to her husband, feeling powerless and unable to help her son. Jerry looked back at his broken family, feeling all their pain and not knowing how to make it better. He could not live with his failure, and he couldn't face them. So he turned away and flew up into the night sky. Mr. Miller knew exactly how his son felt. Jerry was the only one capable of deterring the situation, but he failed, and no one else had the power to help. None of this was Jerry's fault, but those two deaths will haunt his conscience forever. Once again, Mr. Miller felt like a worthless husband and father, unable to help his son in his greatest time of need. At this point, there was only one thing left to do. He called Chief Grimes and begged him to help. Cynthia wiped away her tears, stared up at the sky, and prayed for Jerry to be okay. And that's it. We completed chapter 17. I hope you all enjoyed this. Thank you all very much for watching the video, and I will try to make more videos soon. Thank you so much.